All right, so we're going to talk about the special senses now. The special senses are hearing, vision, taste, equilibrium, and olfaction. Equilibrium is your sense of balance and knowing what position you're moving. So let's talk about olfaction first, which is the image here. So olfaction is your sense of smell. And this should look very familiar to you, right? So we have the olfactory bulb, the rounded end of our olfactory nerve, cranial nerve 1. Then where it stops being yellow and becomes sort of the color of the brain, this is the olfactory tract. The olfactory tract then of course has fibers that goes into the brain. Remember that this region is the ethmoid bone, and the ethmoid bone, this part of the ethmoid bone is called the cribriform plate, and those holes were called olfactory foramina, and they allowed those fibers, right, the olfactory nerve fibers, to run down into the upper region of your nasal cavity where you have a special piece of tissue called the olfactory epithelium. So you need to know this word. And the olfactory epithelium, this is greatly exaggerated. It does not look like this. You don't have like tree branches coming down from the top of your nose, but it just shows you that within this tissue, you're going to have the ends of these nerve endings. And the little dots represent the molecules that are coming off of the surfaces of substances. So what's kind of interesting is that the reason you smell an object is because those molecules of that object come off that object, they come into your nose and they bind to the receptors on these nerve endings. So really, you know, it's these tiny molecules that are coming into your nose. This is a blow up of the olfactory epithelium. So here we have that word. So it's a piece of tissue that's about the size. So I heard this a while ago. It's about the size of a postage stamp, but postage stamps have changed sizes recently, and they're big ones and small ones. So I'm guessing about the smaller size postage stamp. And within this very small piece of tissue, we have a collection of different cells. So of course, in blue, we're going to have the olfactory receptor cell. So this is the nerve, or I should say the nerve fiber, which comes down, and then you'll have this cilia. So these are called olfactory cilia, and they're going to have receptors that are binding to these molecules. So the receptors are not shown, okay, but the reason why we have cilia and they spread out like this is to increase the surface area, or increase how much cell nerve ending we have, right, to bind many molecules. So then we have in pink, we're going to have these support cells. We're going to, of course, have mucus-producing glands. So this structure here is a mucus-producing gland. And we're going to have, very interestingly, these round cells here. These are called regenerative basal cells. So this is the first area in our body that scientists have found that these can actually replace neurons. So these regenerative basal cells divide to replace worn out olfactory receptor cells, which is quite startling. And so they've actually been using these specific regenerative basal cells in the olfactory epithelium to test out basically like stem cell research, or like spinal cord regrowth, using them as stem cells to try and get the spinal cord to heal itself, to regrow neurons. And they have had some success in that, and they've had some setbacks, but you know, I've heard of some research projects that have worked out. So this is a really exciting area to realize this. So that is in bold in your notes, to know that these are regenerative basal cells are here, and they are stem cells of neurons. All right, so one thing about the sense of smell is that your receptors here, right, they're going to bind different chemicals. And you're not born with the receptor for every single chemical out there. So you're not born with a receptor for chocolate, or a receptor for rubber, or a receptor for, you know, a lead pencil. Those don't exist. What you have is receptors for different kinds of molecules, and then the molecules, when they hit your olfactory epithelium, what molecules are present will create a pattern, right? So if you smell, let's say, chocolate, that chocolate has different kinds of molecules, right? The organic molecules that are coming off that chocolate, there's different kinds, different molecules, and they're going to hit the receptors, and that pattern of recognition, right? So the molecules are there, create a pattern. The pattern is then sent up into the brain, and the brain puts together that smell for you. So the holistic smell is really just a pattern of these different molecules that hit your nose. I would say hit your olfactory epithelium, okay? So the next topic is going to be our gustation. Whoops. Okay, so I don't actually have a picture for gustation, but gustation is going to be covered in the digestive system. All right, so right when I said I don't have any pictures of gustation, I thought I paused and I added some. So this is an image from your digestive system lecture. So you'll see this again, but just to give you a visual of what we're talking about, so your taste buds are actually embedded within these bumps of your tongue. The bumps of your tongue are called papillae, and you've seen this word before, I think, with the skin, right? Dermal papillae. But so the word papillae means little bump. So all the little bumps you see on your tongue, those are papillae. They're not taste buds. Taste buds are microscopic. They are inside the walls of your papillae. And let's take a look at, right? So this is, it looks like an onion, right? But it is just a little region of lots of different cells. We have our cranial nerve taste fibers. So remember when we talked about, when you guys studied the cranial nerves, how 3 of our cranial nerves actually donated fibers to the tongue, the back of the tongue, the sides of the tongue, most of the tongue. So this is our cranial nerve, and these are the chemoreceptors of our taste buds. So the gustatory hairs are very similar to the cilia of our olfactory epithelium. They finger out, right, to give more surface area, so they're able to detect more chemicals in your food. This is a histology slide of it, what a taste bud looks like. So for now, just realize that you know your cranial nerve fibers will come into a taste bud. The chemicals that are binding to the receptors here work the same way as smell. So it's a pattern of electrical signals that goes up into the brain that gives you your sense of taste. But what's more interesting actually is that your sense of taste and all your senses really are a holistic, it's all of your senses coming together to create one holistic perception. So your sense of taste is probably one that is the most easy to talk about, because when we eat food, we smell it a lot. And some of you guys may already know this, but most, like, your tongue tastes mainly these 5 different tastes, which is sweet, sour, bitter, salty, and umami. And they're spread out throughout the tongue, and they're that sort of old map of the different areas of the tongue that taste different things is actually debunked. Like all the taste buds all over the place can taste those different 5 tastes. But the actual quality of the taste, the nuances of it come with your sense of smell. So if you're eating strawberry jam, your tongue will register the sweetness of the sugar in the jam and the fructose in the strawberry, but your smell is going to sense strawberry, right? So it's going to be sweet on the tongue, but strawberry in the nose. And which is why if you're sick and your sense of smell has been dampened, food no longer tastes good, right? It's very bland. It doesn't have any flavor. So that's the reason why. But even on top of that, I was talking about the holistic perception of taste. When you look at food, if it's beautiful, you know, appetizing, if it's brightly colored and it just looks good to you, it's going to taste better to you. So that visual feedback to the brain is going to inform your taste. You're going to like it. It's literally going to taste better because your brain's going to be in a position to just perceive it as a better tasting food. Even the hearing, like the crunch or the texture, the feel of the food in your mouth also play a role in your overall sense of taste. I talk about this in class. I'll just mention it here. So food companies, you know, food industry knows all of this already. And so when they package food for you, they are very aware of all the perceptions coming into whether you like the food or not, whether you like their product. And so if you've ever thought about, you know, potato chips always come in a crinkly black bag. Potato chips don't come in a cracker cardboard box, right? Even though they probably could. But the reason why they don't is because the crunchy crinkling of that bag sets you up to believe that the product on the inside is also kind of crunchy and crisp and you know, and sort of fresh in that way. And I think some of us, you know, in our lives may have put potato chips into like a Ziploc bag for lunch. And then at lunch, when you open up that Ziploc bag, your chips might not taste as good to you because you think that maybe they went stale in those few hours between putting them in the bag and then eating them. But actually, it's probably that perception, your perception of the crunchiness has been like down regulated, right? It's kind of set down because you know it's not coming from a crunchy bag. So anyways, not to go on and on, but just to give you an example of how all of your sense of smell, what you see, what you hear, it really is just all your senses working together. So when you like something or you don't like something, or it's actually really all of your senses that are working together. Okay, so this is just a quick picture of, remember those cranial nerves. Those cranial nerves are going to come into, right, all those chemicals are bind to those taste buds, the chemoreceptors in the taste buds. The electrical signals come into the brain. This is just a little review, right? All of our senses come into the thalamus, our relay station, and then from the thalamus, it's going to move over to, really this should be the insula, which it mentions here, right? The insula is the gustatory cortex where we are going to interpret our taste. So this is a really good sort of overview of your nervous system. All right, so that is all we're going to talk about in this unit. So the sense of smell and your sense of taste. So we're going to pause here.